Welcome in, everybody, to a nightcap edition of Birds 365, coming to you live on a Tuesday night after day 15 of Eagles practice here with John McMullen, who was our eyes and ears down at practice today. Welcome into Birds 365, everybody. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday evening, sir?
Good. Eagles shifted the schedule a little bit, so tomorrow's going to be it for the training camp portion of practices, and so we're getting closer to the first perfect training camp in NFL history. And I say that tongue in cheek because obviously nobody has those statistics, but still no interceptions for Jalen Hurts through 15 practices.
Yeah, nothing still for Jalen Hurts. Good update there, Johnny Mac. So just for everybody that's following along, that will mean no night show on Thursday. So I had initially told everybody that our night shows this week would be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That means they will just be Tuesday and Wednesday for the night show. So Thursday we'll be back in our normal programming on the morning show, and Friday as well. So I want to thank everybody. Take this moment, by the way, to thank everybody for being here tonight on this nighttime edition. Sometimes I like the nighttime shows, Johnny Mac, kind of simmer down, see what happened at the day, and then we get it from you live. What were your overall reactions, and what did you see today from practice number 15, the sights and sounds?
I called it AJ Day, big AJ Day, which is kind of like an evergreen tweet or evergreen statement. Pretty much dominates every day, but today amped it up a little bit. Had a deep pass where he beat Quinyon Mitchell and punted the ball. That's the only thing he didn't do well. He shanked the punt as the celebration after about a 45-yard touchdown, I would say, with Quinyon Mitchell.
I saw. I think the Eagles posted it out, the shanked punt, John.
Yeah, he shanked the punt.
Yeah.
But dominant. Had his best play was one-on-one against Darius Slay. Back shoulder throw, left-handed, off-handed catch, one-handed, to the point Slay just went up to him and shook his hand essentially and said, "Well done." And then just the intermediate stuff over the middle, uncoverable. I mean, of all the things we talked about last year, the fact that the Eagles didn't go to that when they needed it may be the weirdest trajectory of all for that offense. Because, I mean, that is easy money, taking candy from a baby. Nobody can deal with him. Nobody's been able to deal with him on this defense the entire camp. And it was just AJ Day is how I described it. I usually get a couple sort of leads, but this was all AJ Brown. Devontae had a great day too, but AJ was so good. It was really something to see.
How is it different, John, in terms of them working the ball to him in the middle of the field? Great to hear he had another good practice, but seems to be the usual at this point where AJ just dominates. But what looks different to you from how they're getting it? Is it simple as an AJ slant and they're using the middle of the field?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they call it a bang 8 route, which it's a slant. And his body's so big, and he's, even when he's not open, he's open, that type of thing. So as long as you have confidence to throw the football over the middle of the field, it's going to be there for you. And it's probably, the one mainstay, I would say. And the ironic thing, I talk about it all the time, while the Eagles were bottom 5 throwing the football over the middle of the field, they were top 5 in efficacy when doing it. In other words, they didn't do it a lot, but when they did do it, they were very successful. And that has mostly to do with AJ Brown, but also Devontae and the fact that they're using him a lot more in the slot. It looks like they're going to be doing that this year. So that is something I think Eagles fans will be very excited by, because that can create some interesting matchups. And those two are just I got that one right. I remember telling Jody that basically the year they teamed up, it's the best wide receiver duo from a talent perspective the Eagles have ever had. And you can go back to Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin. People want to go back to Harold and Mike Quick, although that was the end of Harold's career, the beginning of Mike's. Really didn't overlap. They've already proven they're by far the best tandem the Eagles have ever had. And it's something to see every day because they are arguably, Ed and I do the top 25 Eagles pure football players. AJ was unanimous as number 1 this year. Devontae ended up number 3. Lane was number 2. You could argue they're 1, 2. Lane, Lane's still great. And you see when he's not at practice, like he wasn't at practice. In team drills, they gave him a Veterans Day on Sunday. It's a flipping disaster when he's not out there. So he's still very good. But you can make a strong argument that the 2 best players on this team are A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith.
The crazy times here in Philadelphia as the receivers, as John points out. They were 1 and 3. By the way, I think that was the correct rating, at least where we are right now is Lane, to have Lane at number 2. But pretty impressive that we have receivers that are that good. John, I'm going to get into the injuries. We're going to dive into everybody. Don't worry, everybody. We'll talk about Saquon. We'll talk about Bryce Huff. We'll talk Nakobe Dean. We'll get all the guys that everybody wants to hear the updates from. Before I do that, I want to do injuries, but just one follow-up to the A.J. Brown commentary. Who predominantly covers him at practice? I know the deep ball, he had Quinion on him, and then the one-handed catch, he had Slay. Is it kind of a revolving door for who covers him?
Yeah, I mean, he moves all over, so he'll play even more so. He can play all 3 receiver positions, X, Z, flex, and Kellen Moore is more apt to do that than they have been previously. So he moves around. Everybody gets a chance to get beaten, and generally everybody gets beaten. So it's an equal opportunity thing from the DB's perspective. But yeah, as Jonathan Gannon would say, that's tough duty if you're a
equal opportunity to get burnt.
Yeah.
John, some injuries today at practice. Maybe nothing serious, but let's get the injury update. At least what you know right now on our important guy here, a lot of them, but, namely the ones today. Saquon Barkley goes out with his first training camp injury. I don't know how serious it was. What did you see from Barkley today?
Yeah, I don't think it's too serious. He sat out probably the last 3 team periods, and he was off to the side working with trainers. They were massaging looked like his lower back. But he didn't leave the field, and after practice, he was signing autographs for the fans that were there. So I don't, that if there was any doubt, any concern, he wouldn't have been doing that. So I don't think it's too serious. Probably just one of those things. And he should be fine.
Was there anything visible in the play when he went down, or
no,
just like a tweak? Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't on a play. He just sort of walked off and during the special teams drill, and started working with the trainers and then never came back in. And then Dallas Goedert's worked in individuals, but didn't work in team drills. Didn't see anything noticeable there. That might just be a veteran sort of pitch count day as well for him. Trevor Keegan is the one who got noticeably injured. He was limping, looked to be in a decent amount of pain, and he left practice and didn't return. So that's the one we'll keep an eye on tomorrow. Trevor Keegan, and he happened. Kellen Moore happened to mention him in a positive way this morning in his press conference and said, you don't notice him that much, and that's a good thing, certainly for a rookie offensive lineman, because he's not making a lot of mistakes and looks like he's got some real potential down the road to be something. So that's an injury we'll keep an eye on. But don't think Saquon's serious at all. Don't think Dallas is serious at all. So, and actually, the injury report as a whole was more positive for the first time.
Yeah, it looked a little shorter today.
Yeah, all the limited guys were back to a full go. So C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Grant Calcaterra, even Cooper DeJean, Oren Burks, even they were all the limited guys. And a bunch of guys returned. Joe Nada returned after missing one practice. E.J. Jenkins returned after missing one practice. Moro Ajomo returned after missing one practice. And Gabe Hall returned after missing one practice. So bunch of guys came back. Bunch of guys are off the limited list. The only ones left are Matt Hennessy and Tyler Steen, who did not practice on the offensive line. Albert O, a tight end, who's been out for a while with an abdomen injury. The two concussions at wide receiver, which are John Ross and Johnny Wilson, and Caden Stearns, who, hasn't been healthy since he got here. He's got a bit of a knee, and the Eagles knew there would be a ramp-up period with him. So, it's starting to lighten up on the injury reports.
Yeah, been lucky in that we haven't had anything serious, so everybody is still coming back. It'll be interesting to see. You just mentioned Caden Stearns. I'm interested where he might fit on this roster, or if he will fit on this roster. Just a tease for everybody. In hour number 2 today, we will look at the 53-man roster and where we are as of August 20th. It will not be John's final prediction for the 53-man. He will do that after the preseason game. It's normally a competition for those who don't know. With the beat reporters, they all kind of pick a winner based on who had the most correct on the 53-man roster. So it won't be the final prediction, but it will be our prediction through practice number 15. We'll do that in hour number 2 today. Johnny Mac, let's run through it now. The practice of the day, you kind of gave it a good recap as the A.J. Brown day. What else stood out on the offensive side of the ball today? Jalen Hurts streak continues. What else did you see at practice today?
Yeah, I mean, Jalen continues to play pretty well. It wasn't all offense, though. It was, the defensive front is still getting a pretty decent pass rush. I would say the continued struggles of the second and third team has been pretty consistent now. So, the linebacker rotation is just insane at this point to be this late. Boy, if anything, Vic's amping that up, maybe he's playing the competitive advantage card. Maybe he isn't, but they started where they always start, and that continues to be Devin White and Zach Baun, but you saw Devin White and Nakobe Dean together. You saw Zach Baun and Nakobe Dean together. You saw Nakobe and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. You saw Devin and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Every combination possible is being thrown out there and looked at as they try to figure out that linebacker position. So that continues to be interesting. A lot of people made a big deal about Quinyon starting outside, but I mean, that's been the case for a while now. If they only have 2 linebackers on the field, 2 cornerbacks on the field, he's the starter with Darius Slay. And then when they go to nickel, he kicks inside, and Isaiah Rodgers has been coming in. That was the case today. The only difference was they usually start in nickel, and they didn't start nickel today. So they only had 2 corners on the field, and that's why Mitchell was outside. Ringo then kind of rotates in for Rodgers at times. And ultimately, I will say it was not a good day for Cooper DeJean. So, there's plenty of time. August 20th to September 6th, so we're talking 17 days. There's plenty of time to get him ramped up. And I know a lot of people think ultimately Green Bay is going to see Cooper in the slot and Quinyon Mitchell outside. I've always said and clearly Vic has said, verbalized it on a number of occasions, he'd prefer to play Quignon outside, but he wants to get his best trio on the field. And a little bit of pause with Cooper DeJean today because Britton Covey was schooling him in one-on-ones, and Devontae Smith was also having his way, which is really difficult work for Cooper.
Yeah, but if you want him to play in week 1, you better get him up against Devontae Smith. That'll teach him real quick.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people, like he barely played. Like people know that about Quignon. He barely played inside at Iowa. He was an outside corner 90% of the time. So
yeah,
similar type of situation. And this is the first time you kind of saw it. He hasn't been out there much, but he looked right away. All right, this guy's pretty good. And today took a little bit of a step back, I would say, especially in one-on-ones when you really have to lock down. He's not used to those small, quick guys who can create that separation. And we'll see how that shakes out. But still, overall, much better group at cornerback, much more talented. But I say it all the time. That doesn't mean, and Britton talked about this after practice, doesn't mean you're not going to have hiccups. Everybody has hiccups and everybody has struggles and as young defensive backs in this league.
Good stuff, John. And we'll stay on the defense. I was going to start with the offense there, but you got into that defensive groupings. What the linebacker, the revolving door at the linebacker just continues to revolve, Johnny Mac. Did any one player, did anybody stand out today? Did Nakobe Dean continue his streak of good practices? What did you see from the linebackers today on the field?
Nothing splashy like it has been, but nothing terrible either. So I think all of them have made decent cases for themselves. From my perspective, Nakobe has clearly been the best since he's kind of, gotten his feet, no pun intended, I guess, but under him coming back from the 2 foot injuries. And then the other guys, I've been saying it for a while. It's kind of like, all right, pick one. Yeah. I don't think there's going to be much difference between, if you're going to go with Devin White or you're going to go with Zach Bond, and maybe a piecemeal it. Maybe, Vic did unveil sort of a pass rushing look where Zach Bond was the linebacker and he used an extra edge player, Patrick Johnson, which was interesting. And I hadn't seen that before. So he's even breaking out new tandems and new sort of theories if you just want to go pure pass rush, I guess. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it's going to be Devin White and Nakobe Dean, but we shall see.
Yeah, we will see. Nobody stood out though from a play wise. It was just more about the rotation today.
Yeah, more about the rotation. Yeah, like on Sunday, that everybody had pass breakups. They were making plays all over the field. Nakobe made plays in the run game. He made plays. He made plays in the pass game and the coverage aspect of it. He made plays as a blitzer. Nothing splashy like that. Probably the biggest play in the backfield was from Quignon Mitchell, interestingly, in the slot, who got we got Saquon Barkley in the backfield when they used an unbalanced look with Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata on the same side, and they tried a little sweep to Barkley, and Mitchell was able to shoot right through. Typically, I thought, when I was watching the play, I thought it was one of the linebackers, and it was actually Quignon Mitchell.
Good stuff there from Johnny Mac. I have a super chat, John, on Cooper DeJean. I want to hit on it. I don't know if you're going to like it very much, Johnny Mac. Let's see. Big Marshall. What's up, Big Marsh? Appreciate you being here. He says, Cooper DeJean is not a corner. He is a safety. Johnny Mac, what's your take on that?
Well, he's never played safety. He's never taken one rep at safety in Philadelphia.
I
A
don't think
lot
he
of
did at
people.
Iowa either, did he?
He played a little bit. Probably, they called it the star position, but 90+% of the time he was an outside corner. The Eagles scouted him as an outside corner. Um, a lot of people project him inside because of his football IQ, and they don't think, to be blunt, a white cornerback can play outside. But his athleticism is off the charts. Um, yeah, I mean, until he takes a rep at safety, I can't say he's going to be a safety. I mean, he's not taking one rep at safety, not one. And Vic was talking about that the other day. Um, and now the time is even more limited. So, they're going to start him in the slot. They're going to play him outside as well. And when you get down to 53 on Tuesday, a week from the day, then when that's when the cross training really starts. Because then right now you got 90 guys. Everybody's got a backup. When you get down to 53, bunch of guys have to play different positions. Backup offensive lineman, everybody knows you need to have versatility. Vic was talking about it with the nose tackles. In theory, you'd like to have PJ Mustipher to be the backup nose tackle, but you can't just keep a backup nose tackle. That he's got to play 4-eye technique. He's got to play 3 technique. He might have to play 5 technique. You got to play a bunch of different things. Same things with defensive backs. Avonte Maddox wasn't a safety when he was a rookie, but they had a bunch of injuries and they were forced to play him there. And that kind of stuff will happen. And sometimes you even have to throw somebody into the deep end of the pool. But as far as he's a safety, well, if he was a safety, they would give him reps at safety, and he hasn't taken rep 1 at safety.
Yeah, so we'll see what they end up doing with him. I know everybody talked about the versatility of him when he was drafted. Big Marsh, appreciate the super chat, man. We'll see what they end up doing with Cooper DeJean. I would side that I think he's going to be a corner. I think they drafted him to be a corner. I think they want him to be a corner. It's a more valuable position, especially in the eyes of the Eagles. So we'll see what they end up doing there. John, let's go to that defensive line today. What did you see from the D line today at practice? As a whole, go ahead. What did you see from the D line?
Yeah, the good performance, I would say, from the defensive front as a whole. Carter makes plays every day. It's just a matter of, today was in the backfield on a run. He typically gets 1 or 2 of those a day. There were some decent pass rush as well, which I think has been pretty consistent over the past couple of days, maybe even the past week plus or so. I think you've seen a real uptick in pass rush. Part of that has been some of the issues on the offensive line as well. You have to be fair about that, injuries and such. But so mostly positive. I think you saw, and you're continuing to see some good pass rush, pretty consistent pass rush from the guys up front. And that's a good thing because that defensive front remains the strength of the Eagles defense. And it starts with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. And they've both been playing pretty well, I would say.
How Bryce Huff look today?
Yeah, Bryce was fine. He's been picking it up a little bit more recently. Now Lane was back, but he was on a pitch count, so he didn't take all the first team reps. Fred Johnson was in there, and I've been saying it for a while. When Fred's in there, he shows up a little bit more. Yeah. And when Lane's in there, he gets shut down. But who cares? He's not playing against Lane. Hassan Reddick did the same thing happened to Hassan Reddick. I've said it numerous times on the show. A lot of people
get shut down by Lane Johnson.
Yeah.
Michael Parsons got shut down by Lane Johnson.
Yeah, and I asked a bunch of guys, I said, looking back, I don't remember Hassan Reddick really flashing at practice. And most of the guys agreed with me. And that's because he was mainly going against Lane Johnson. And when the regular season came, magically Hassan Reddick became Hassan Reddick.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening there. Good stuff on the defensive line. John, one update on another guy in that defensive line. How's Jalix Hunt looked? We had a couple splashes of him in camp early. Kind of seemed like he was more further along in his development than expected. What have you seen from him recently?
Yeah, I think that's a good word to describe Jalix. Yeah, every once in a while, you'll see a little bit of a splash, and because he can, he's athletic and he can go straight ahead, and if he, clicks on a particular rep, it can look pretty impressive, but probably the consistency is not there from rep to rep. And sort of what Vic has said, when he gives out the backhanded compliments, he said, well, I thought he played better than I thought he would, is basically what Vic said in the New England game. So look, he's the fifth edge rusher right now. Maybe the sixth, you can argue from a real world perspective. And by that, I mean, if they needed a fifth to really play because of an injury, they get bumped up. It'd probably be Patrick Johnson before him. But while I say that, if you look at what Bryce Hupp did with the Jets last year, as sort of a one-trick pony, maybe he could be that if you need it. Now, they're not going to plan for it, but if you're forced into it, guys get hurt, maybe he could do that. But he, as far as being a well-rounded player, and that snap-to-snap consistency, he's going to need some time, I would say.
Let's move into that offensive side of the ball. Johnny Mack at practice today. Just going to recap up the rest of practice here, everybody. Then I got another good segment planned after this. And then in hour number 2, we're going to be doing John's initial 53-man roster projection, edition number 1, I guess you could call it, as that will not be his final projection or final prediction for the 53-man roster. John, offense today, I know we already talked Jalen. We already talked AJ. What did you see from the rest of that offensive line? How'd the offensive line from that offense? How'd the offensive line look today? Wide receiver 3. What did you see from the offense out there?
Well, again, a little bit of an upheaval. You even saw Nick Gates getting first team right guard reps next to Fred Johnson at times because they had both Lane and Mekhi Becton on a pitch count. So there's been a little bit of sloppiness, I would say, muddiness, whatever you want to call it, that sort of hurts some of the reps because the top guys aren't out there at particular times. So I think that's been the major issue. Wrote about reps at Sports Illustrated the other day, and by that I mean, when I was talking to a personnel guy, his description was you got to evaluate the rep before you can evaluate the player. And by that he meant, who's out there, what's going on? Is it the same group? Is it Lane? Is it Mekhi, or is it Fred and Nick, for instance? All right, different rep. So you don't evaluate it the same way. So that is what I think has been going on with the offensive line. When Lane Johnson's out there, Cam Jurgens out there, Landon Dickerson's out there, Jordan Mailata's out there, it's very good. When 1 or 2 is not, it tends to get a lot shakier a little bit quickly. And that's sort of common sense, but that's where they are when it comes to the offensive line.
And still right guard position, Mekhi Becton still in the driver's seat there?
Oh, yeah. Barring, if he's out there, if he's healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's won that job. That job's over. There's no competition at right guard. Now, I'm a little bit concerned with his knee.
Yeah, I am too. I mean,
he had
a lot of injuries in New York, man.
Yeah, it's a big dude with an injury history, and he's got this big bulky brace on. that he claims isn't a big deal, but he keeps limping on the leg with the big bulky brace. So, do the math. And Tyler Steen's not even healthy again. He missed practice again with the ankle. So he probably came back too quickly. And, without both of them, they tried Brett Toth. And now it was Nick Gates. So you don't want to get down to Brett and Nick. I will say that. But even that, when I say it, Nick Gates has started a lot of games in this league. You probably persevere as long as you have the 4 other guys.
Yeah, it does stink that Trevor Keegan went down to that. He seems to have been coming on recently at camp and then the preseason games, and I don't know how bad his injury is, but he did go down today. You think that'll be a longer term thing or a couple practice thing, or was it just kind of
no way of knowing yet? He was in pretty significant pain. We'll get a better indication tomorrow morning. But as far as Trevor, he hasn't started cross training yet, though. He had not taken one snap at right guard. It's all been left guard as Landon's backup pretty much, and occasional first team rep when Landon was getting a couple plays off here and there, but they have not given him any right guard reps yet. And again, that might change as you get down to the 53. But hey, first you got to see if he's healthy. But Nick Gates has started 39 NFL games. So, it's one of those things. I always go back to 2017 with Stephen Wisniewski and Chance Warmack. They wanted Isaac Seumalo to win the job. He struggled early, and they won the Super Bowl with Wiz. So, when you have 4 other really good offensive linemen, you can persevere with the 5th.
Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out. Good stuff, John, on the recap. Today we hit the injuries, we hit offense, we hit defense. What'd you take away from the press conferences today, Johnny Mac? Anything?
There's a little bit of interesting. I've talked about it since the Eagles set up this coaching staff, but there certainly seems to be 2 distinct fiefdoms with the Eagles. Vic Fangio's in charge of the defense. Kellen Moore's in charge of the offense. And I don't know. Seems like it's almost the separation of church and state. It's like, I'm as a matter of fact, I just wrote about that today. It's like if you go back to Vic on Sunday, every day, I forget what day it is at this time of year, but so Vic spoke on Sunday, and we're all sitting there. And the first question, we're all sitting there. That was coming off the Saturday practice where they were just blitzing the what out of the Eagles offense, which is strange from Vic's history. And so a bunch of us were saying, well, maybe the Eagles offense needed work on it. Maybe they're trying to get the offense prepared. And that was the first question Vic got the next morning was, the blitzing, what's the deal? Is that a byproduct of needing to work on something versus the offense needing it? And he said, and I quote, "There was no consideration for the offense," which again, I chuckled when he said it. It was just time that we installed some stuff. And yesterday we worked on it. We installed it prior to yesterday's practice, which was Saturday, and worked on it and called it a few times. And then the follow-up was, there was never a conversation with Kellen Moore or Nick Sirianni saying, we need to work more on this because it's something that we need. And he said, no, not beforehand. Kellen did tell me afterwards that it was good for them to see that. They need that. And today was Kellen Moore's turn. And I asked him, that was the second question. I asked him, how does that connection work with you and Vic? Are there ever times, Vic said, there was no consideration for the offense when he was installing. Do you guys ever consider each other? Like, I've got to work on this or Vic's got to work on that. And Kellen said he's a little bit more political, but bottom line is he said, they got enough volume on defense. I think we have enough volume on offense that over the course of training camp, you're going to be exposed to a lot of different types of football. So that's the beauty of it. Doug Peterson used to have something called the 10-10-10 practice, which Andy Reid,
Right.
it's an Andy Reid thing. And what that was 10 plays for the offense, 10 plays for the defense, and then special teams, and you rotate that for the entire practice. It was essentially, and the Eagles would have to put out information. They would put out little placards to explain to media what 10-10-10 practices were, because you would have people reporting, oh, Carson Wentz threw an interception. And they're acting as a scout team for the defense. Because that practice was specifically so the offense would service the defense and vice versa. The Eagles don't have that anymore. And you got two guys working on their little fiefdoms, and I don't like the setup. I don't like it. I've said that from day one.
You haven't liked it for a long time, John. You've been saying that all summer. We will see how it shakes out. John, one other guy, I feel I messed this up not asking about this guy when we did our recap before we get to our first commercial break here. Anais Smith, John, did he have his best day of camp today?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. He was another guy. He's kind of working in the slots. Anais finally has calmed down, I think, settled down. Ton of drops. The drops have stopped. Seems to be getting his feet under him, a little bit of a confidence back. Might be too late. We will see. The good part is Howie does not want to cut him. I can guarantee you that. He does not want to cut his draft picks.
Yeah, he's going to be given every chance to make this team.
Yeah. And I go back to Shelton Gibson, who probably had an even worse camp than Anais. And they kept him, at least in the short term. So, he might be doing enough now to where they'll carry him on the roster because he can do some different things as well. Backup punt returner, backup kickoff returner. So he's got some value there. I could see Howie talking himself into it. But yeah, he's doing better, and it's good to see. Maybe CJ calling him out in front of the whole team. Maybe it worked. You don't know how that stuff works with different players, I don't know if you saw the Tua stuff today.
Yeah, absolutely.
About Brian Flores being hard on him. I mean, some guys take to that, some guys don't. And
I think that was that was an extreme measure, I think, but I understand what you're saying.
Well, yeah, I don't know what went on there. I know it's a big deal today.
Yeah.
In the case here, maybe CJ calling him out in front of the team, maybe it lit a fire under him. Other guys would shrink. Maybe he's stepping up. I don't know if that's the case, but he's playing better.
Yeah, well,
that's a positive thing.
That's definitely a positive thing. So good stuff from Anais Smith. Good stuff from practice today. John, who would get the win? Who would you give the win today at practice?
Well, I called it AJ Day, so I'm going offense.
You got to go offense if you call it.
Yeah, consistency from play to play, I think was close. But when you got that kind of performance from one particular offensive player, and Devontae was close as well. Yeah, I got to give it to the offense.
Good stuff there. And then player of the day, I already know the answer, but
well, AJ Day. Yeah.
Good stuff there. So AJ Brown gets gets the player of the day, and offense wins the day today, but a good day all around. We're going to get to our first commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about wide receiver 3 with Johnny Mac. Is there any options out there that we can bring in? John says he thinks that might be the one spot they'll go outside the locker room and bring somebody in here in late August. So we will talk about that next. And then in hour number 2, everybody, our initial 53-man roster projections, our projections part 1, we can or edition number 1, we'll call it. So stay tuned. A lot to come here on Birds 365 on our nightcap edition. Still an hour 15 to play. Hit that like button, everybody. If you're enjoying the show, we'll be back in 3 minutes.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.